dog park is a place for your dog to socialize, not a place to teach your dog socialization.
I could be a mess, stressed in yesterday. He don't care less. He sees me anyway. Yeah, he sees me anyway. My dog thinks I'm great. He thinks I'm number one. He never hates, even when I'm done.
Welcome to Dog Leads with my husband, Steve Bishop. He's a certified dog trainer, has a bachelor's of arts in psychology with a minor in sociology. Steve is a Family Paws parent educator and a member of the Pet Professional Guild. If you have any questions or would like to suggest a topic, you can reach him at bishopsgatetraining@gmail.com. Thank you.
This episode is brought to you by It Goes Without Saying What Our Dogs Are Trying to Tell Us, presented by Steve Bishop. The presentation will be held on January 10th. Advance registration is required. The link is in the description. Stephen Bishop, certified dog trainer, explores how to better understand our canine companions by delving into their body language, behavior, and vocalizations.
I have mixed feelings about dog parks because too many people and dogs don't know how to behave appropriately. But when you get a good group of people together, it is a great place for your dog to get socialization. So I want to talk a little bit about what is appropriate behavior, and some of this is going to be specific to my area, but it does also translate to pretty much just proper etiquette regardless of where you are and what your city ordinances are. Dogs and owners enter an off-leash area at their own risk. There are very few dog parks, at least that I'm aware of, or in my area specifically, where they have somebody that monitors the behavior of the dogs and the people and to make sure everybody's getting along and acting appropriately. So it's left up to the people to make sure the dogs are getting along and not causing any problems. But again, it's that at your own risk type of situation. And the dog just came down to see what I was up to, heard me talking. So the next thing, and this goes for anywhere, not just at the dog park, but clean up after your dog. Most cities and municipalities do have ordinances where you have to pick up after your dog. And I know in my area, there tends to be a lack of trash cans in some of the larger dog park areas. Part of the reason for that is when the trash guys go into the parks, they have to drive across this whole area and they run the risk of dogs getting in the way or them accidentally hurting one of the dogs. And so they just keep the trash cans near the entrance exits to the dog parks. But part of your responsibility as a dog owner is to pick up after your dog and to take that waste out of the dog park, or at least get it off the ground and into the trash can. I see in a lot of places where people will put their dog poop in a bag, tie it shut, and then just throw it down on the ground. And other dogs are going to get a hold of it if they, I forget the scientific term, but if they eat poop, they're going to find that, they're going to rip it open, possibly get some type of parasite or ingest some of that plastic from the bag, and then they've got a huge vet bill. And it always seemed kind of odd to me. I mean, I don't want to step in the poop, but you're taking one of the most biodegradable things in the world and putting it in one of the least biodegradable things in the world and then leaving it on the ground. That just never made any sense to me. I remember going to a bird sanctuary. I'm a smoker, and for good, bad, or indifferent, it is what it is. But while we were in this bird sanctuary, I had a cigarette. I carried that cigarette butt probably 2 miles so that I didn't just throw it down on the ground. It was my responsibility. I chose to do it. I was responsible for getting that waste or that trash out of the bird sanctuary. This one seems pretty obvious, but you don't want to leave your dogs unattended. You don't want to just drop them off in the dog park and then kind of go out and run your errands or something like that. The other part of that, at least in the ordinance in my local area, dogs, you have to be able to control your dog at all times, even when they're off leash. So a good example, my day job, I work for Parks and Rec, so I see quite a few things. I was in this one dog park, person's walking through with their older dog, just kind of meandering through. Another couple with a puppy came along, and their puppy ran at this older dog and just body slammed him. The older dog yelped. I don't think he was hurt, I just think he was more startled, but he didn't like it. And the woman with the older dog said, hey, you need to control your dog. And the people with the puppy said, well, it's a dog park. It's like, yes, it's a dog park, but that doesn't mean the dogs can just do whatever they want. It's kind of like taking your kid to the store and they're running down the toy aisle, taking everything out of the boxes and throwing it around. It's just not appropriate etiquette. So you want to be able to control your dog even when they're off leash. Another thing I see a lot is people get out of their cars in the parking lot with their dog off leash and the dog's just running around. This is a parking lot. Cars are moving through. If the dog shoots out from between two cars, person may or may not see them, may or may not be able to stop in time, and then your dog's injured. And whose fault is that? Certainly not the driver's. So when you get to the dog park, you want to make sure they stay on leash until you get them into the actual dog park, the safe, secure area for the dogs. And then the other side of that is, if your dog is well behaved and under voice control, even if they're off leash, you don't know if some other idiot is going to have a dog that just comes charging up and, like the previous story, body slams the dog. There's, a fight breaks out or something like that. So you want to keep your dog on the leash until you get inside the actual dog park. In our area, at least, they don't allow human food into the fenced or the off-leash areas. And the obvious problem is, if you have a dog that's food aggressive, they come after the food and then you have an issue on your hands. I don't even train dogs inside dog parks because I don't want to have that food around where other dogs could come up and cause a problem. I will say what I do recommend for a lot of dogs, particularly dogs that are reactive to other dogs, is go to a park with a dog park, work outside of the dog park so the other dogs are running around. The dog I'm working with can see the other dogs, but they can't interact with them. And then also I can vary the distance from those dogs or from the dog park so that the dog I'm working with is, I don't want to say non-reactive, but they're able to control those impulses a lot better. It's not to the point where the dog has gotten over a threshold where they're so close they've got to react and there's nothing they can do about it. So I do work around dog parks sometimes, but I would never go into a dog park and actually work with another dog there. If I do need another dog much closer, I would set up that situation in a secure area, the dog I'm working with, and one other dog is the distraction dog, and work with them that way until they're comfortable and we get to that point, whatever it is we happen to be working on, dog aggressive or reactivity or whatever it happens to be. I've talked a little bit about this one, but particularly in a dog park situation, prong collars, shock collars, spiked collars, any of those types of things, you want to make sure you take those off before you go into the dog park. And quite frankly, I don't recommend the use of them, and I'm pretty strongly against the use of them, but want to make sure you take them off before you go into the dog parks, because there's just too much potential for injury. Get dogs playing, even when they're playing, they go for the neck a lot, and we don't want them to hurt another dog because they've got those prongs underneath their teeth, or a tooth gets caught on a collar, which I've seen happen before, and then one of the dogs is seriously injured even though it was just play. So make sure you take those collars off, particularly ones that rely on aversiveness. Again, in our area, there is a rule that you can't groom your dog inside the dog park. It just makes a mess. That fur gets everywhere. Nobody wants to see it. Nobody wants to deal with it. Obviously, you don't want to deal with it because you're doing it in the dog park, but if it's that big of an issue, take them to a groomer. take them outside in your own backyard, but the dog park is not the place for it. This one always makes me chuckle, but I think some people must need to hear it. Don't take any other animals except dogs into the dog park. Even if your animal, whether, I don't know, it's a pony or a pig or cat, even if they're fine with dogs, you don't know how the other dogs are going to react to that animal, and there's that potential for injury and just bad situations. And this part, it isn't ordinances in my area at least, but it's just some common courtesy things. So one, you want to make sure your dog is having a good time. I've taken my dogs to the dog parks, and Talbot and Duncan in particular, we got there and they checked out a few of the other dogs. They were fine with them, but they just stayed next to me. We threw the tennis ball some. They had extra space to run around, but they just didn't have any interest in interacting with any of these other dogs that they didn't know. When I got together with my friends who had dogs, and it was dogs that Talbot or Duncan knew, they would play and roughhouse and just had a grand old time. They loved playing with other dogs, but it was just dogs that they knew. So make sure your dog is enjoying themselves and having a good time. Talbot and Duncan, they didn't care, so we just didn't go to the dog park that much. Also, you want to be aware of if your dog is overly sensitive around other dogs. So this goes back to what I said before, where this is not a place to teach your dog socialization. It's like taking somebody who is an introvert and saying, okay, we're going to work on that together, and then taking them to a rave or something like that, where they're just totally overwhelmed. So you want to slowly introduce them to those situations. If it's important to you that your dog get out and socialize and whatnot. One of the things I like about our area is there are a few parks where they have areas that are off-leash areas, but they're not contained. So there's no fence around them, and you can just take your dog out there and let them off-leash. My dogs have always been really well off-leash trained. They responded well to voice commands, so I didn't have an issue with them running off-leash. But I've had other dogs that I didn't trust in the backyard hardly. That was an exaggeration, but I mean, it gives you an idea of knowing. You want to know your dog and make sure they're in the right situation, in the right environment for their temperament and their sensitivities. And then along with that, is your dog a bully? Like the example I talked about earlier where the puppy was running into this older dog. I wouldn't take that dog to a dog park until they learned appropriate behavior around other dogs. That was totally inappropriate. There was no reason for it except the puppy was overexcited, and that dog needed more exposure, more socialization in a controlled environment, not in the dog park. So going back to, is your dog enjoying this, or are they having a good time? If you're just there to enjoy the outdoors, or sit outside so you can read a book, again, it may not be the best environment for you or your dog. You'd sit in the backyard in a lawn chair and have the dog next to you, kind of like Malcolm is sitting here next to me, just kind of watching me do my thing, and we're enjoying it. We're enjoying our time together. We don't have to be at a dog park to do that. This also goes to, I talked a little bit about this in the loose leash walking episode. You want to be present. This is probably a highlight of your dog's day if they enjoy being at dog parks or being around other dogs. So you don't want to just show up, sit on your cell phone, sit down with your book or something like that. You want to actually be present, be part of what's going on, and make sure nothing gets out of hand. Even my dog, when he was with dogs that he knew well and they got along great, every once in a while, they, just like with friends, family, whomever, something happens and they get a little testy with each other. They get a little nippy or snipey or that type of thing. You want to make sure you're aware of when something like that happens so you can separate the dogs, let them calm down a little bit, and then they can go back and play, romp, chase each other. So back to, dog parks are not a place to teach your dog socialization. If your dog is not used to being around other dogs, exposing them to a number of strange dogs can do more harm than good. If your dog is fearful or aggressive towards other dogs, again, this just may exacerbate the problem. it's not going to make it better. And if you have a problem dog, you should consult a certified trainer or a behaviorist before introducing them to the dog park. And again, in a previous episode, I talked about how to pick a trainer and a behaviorist, so I won't rehash all of that, but just make sure you're getting somebody who is competent and well educated. And then, of course, make sure you're taking your dog to the vet. Make sure they don't have any physical problems. The running is not going to cause any issues. Malcolm just had surgery on his shoulder. If I was a dog park person, I wouldn't take him right now until that fully heals. Be aware of your dog's physical condition. And then back to training, you want to make sure you train your dog to interact with you, so that if there is an issue, you can call the dog back to you and get them out of that situation. One of the things I like to do with my recalls when I'm teaching that is I'll let the dog go off and play, do whatever they want to do, and I will call them back to me, give them lots of pets, lots of praise, and then I'll let them go back and do what they were doing. That's the reward. And it teaches the dog, okay, if I come back, then good things happen and I get to keep doing what I want to do. Every once in a while something bad happens, but you can use that to help reinforce your recall training. And then in my notes here, I have, you want to train your dog that it's okay to play with other dogs as long as both are relaxed and having fun. I see some dogs at the dog parks that are intimidated by certain breeds or certain size dogs, certain color dogs, whatever. If that dog is running up to this timid dog, you want to be able to call that dog off so the more timid dog doesn't feel overwhelmed. Another thing, I don't see this so much anymore, but it still does happen sometimes. Want to beware of armchair dog trainers. And this is people that, I don't know, read an article in a magazine or watched a TV show and decided they're a trainer. Not to brag on myself, but I have 15 years experience. I've taken several classes on dog training. I have a psychology degree. I constantly read and study new information. So I like to think I know what I'm talking about when I give advice. Somebody who's just watched a TV show or read a magazine article is not going to have that same knowledge. They may have good knowledge, but one piece of knowledge by itself isn't going to be enough to go into a dog park and tell everybody how to handle their dogs. So don't allow someone to discipline your dog. That may just make them fearful of strangers. Don't attempt to train or discipline someone else's dog if you're not a certified trainer. And even when I've been in the dog park and seen something, I always ask first. It's like, hey, I'm noticing your dog doing X, Y, and Z. I've been training for 15 years. Can I give you a piece of advice? So something like that. I'm not going to just go in and start working with these dogs without the owner's consent. If there's a problem dog, I'm going to do what I have to keep myself and my dog safe, and then I'm just going to leave the park. It's not worth getting into the potential conflict with another person over how their dog is acting. So let's talk about play a little bit. If I could study play all the time, I would love to do that. It just fascinates me. I so enjoy studying nonverbal communication, which a lot of play, particularly in dogs, that's what it is. It's nonverbal communication. I won't go real in depth into this. I want to keep the podcast at a manageable length, but we'll talk about a couple of things. Play is not completely functional. It's not so much considered rehearsal behavior for hunting or fighting or that type of thing. And it's not so much considered to be exercise for puppy because the effects are only temporary. I think, and what a lot of other people think, is that it's purely, I shouldn't say purely, but it's about solidifying those social bonds with another individual. Play is also what's called a patomorphic behavior, and patomorphic just means childlike. So we think about, well, play, for example, Physical characteristics would be the larger eyes, shorter muzzle on a dog, rounder faces, etc. With the behavior, we do not see play in most adult animals, at least to the extent that we see it in puppies. The exceptions are, we see it in dogs, we see it in otters, we see it in dolphins. There's a few other animals, but for the most part, once an animal reaches sexual maturity, you don't see that play behavior in them anymore. It's not part of their social interactions. It's not needed as much as when they are younger. Play tends to be spontaneous. It's voluntary. You can't force somebody to play with you. Usually that's where we see aggression if one animal wants to play and another one doesn't, whether it's people or dogs, etc. It's pleasurable. It's self-rewarding. It's done for its own sake. So again, I think it's just more about solidifying those social bonds. It does tend to be incomplete behaviors. So the chasing game, for example, does not end in a catch and a kill. It's incomplete. It just is the chase for the sake of the chase. I have in my notes, it is awkward, precocious, involves behavior patterns with modified form. Particularly with dogs, it tends to be modified hunting behaviors, so the chasing, the wrestling, etc. But it never ends in that fatal blow, fatal bite. Play behavior tends to be repeated, so you'll see the chase over and over again. You'll see, two dogs stand off, face each other, and wrestle. Then they take a break, and then they wrestle again, and then they take a break. And so those patterns are repeated. Those behaviors are repeated. Play is potentially training for unexpected situations, losing and regaining control. That regaining of control can be seen as rewarding. But one of the interesting things in most breeds, so the chasing game, for example, you'll see dog A chase dog B, and then after a little while, dog B chases dog A, but then dog A will start chasing dog B again. So the control is rewarding, that you get to be the chaser every once in a while, but you also tend to see those role reversal. So the big takeaway is just be aware of your dog and their emotional state. If they're having a good time, go ahead and take them to the dog park if that's something that you want to do, but just be aware that you're there for the dog. Want to make sure you're present and that they are having a good time. Hopefully that's some food for thought for any social interaction, whether it's a dog park or just a play date with friends and their dogs. If you have any questions, any comments, anything you'd like to hear me talk about, you can leave those suggestions in the comments, or you can email me at bishopsgatetraining@gmail.com.